right to the clip. So I told you first day that one of the nice things about this class is that the units are pretty much independent of each other. So if you didn't like unit A, if sets was not your thing, that's okay. We're going to turn our attention to something new today. Also, good news about that is maybe you didn't take the class seriously and or whatever, and you didn't really do much studying. You're not like in algebra. When you get to unit 2, there's a lot of stuff from the first unit that you have to remember. Here, you can say, okay, I can regroup. I can begin to do things a little different and get going. So what we're going to talk about in unit B or unit 2 in chapter 3 in the book is called logic. I don't know if any of you have been exposed to this before or not. It's quite useful in a lot of areas. I mean, if you are going to do anything remotely connected to law, legal profession, political science, being able to form an argument that is valid and has meaning is going to be super important. Believe it or not, the stuff that we do here, if you are into computers, which I don't know if you are or not, the logic is underneath the circuitry of computers. How you would write a computer program is all based on logic kind of topics. So this has a broad application, and maybe you're not going to do either of those, and you're just going to learn a little something new. So here we go. Starting with logic, we're going to start ground floor. So the first thing we have to know is a sentence that is either true or false. So this is the important thing. When we deal with logic, we're not dealing with opinion things. We're not dealing with how we feel about things. We're dealing with things that are true or false. And a sentence that can be categorized in that way is called a statement. So logic is made up of statements. That's why I mention it, and that's why we're starting there. Remember, I do not assume you've ever seen this or know anything about it. That's the beauty of this class, is everything starts fresh. So what I've listed below that in example 1 are just examples of 3 statements that we're going to associate the truth value with. And so help me out. The first one is the capital of Florida is Orlando. Is that a true statement, or would that be a false statement? Yeah, that's a false statement. So we'll just write the truth value right here. Great. So the second statement, Winter Haven is in Polk County. If you know your local geography, is that true or false? True. Yes, we are all sitting in Polk County right now. Great. And then last but not least, Professor Perkins is losing his hair. Is that true or false? You can say it. I know it's happening. You're not hurting my feelings. Yes, it's true. Perfect. The reason I put that last example up there in addition to comic relief is just to make the point that logic is not concerned with how we feel about things. Like, I might not like losing my hair, but that does not change the truth value of it. So we have to kind of disassociate ourselves from maybe any positive or negative feelings we might have about a particular statement. These two things are separate. So far, are we so good? We doing all right? All right, you let me know, okay? So each of those 3 things in example 1, each of these is what's called a simple statement. And what makes it a simple statement is it just conveys a single idea. Okay, so we can go back, we could read through each of those. The first one's concerned with the capital of Florida. The second one is concerned about where Winter Haven is. And the third one is concerned with the status of my hairline. Okay, so each of those is a simple statement. Now, simple statements are not super interesting. You can see they're either true or false. There's not a whole lot to do with it. So what we concern ourselves, because what our goal is in here, is we want to build up to the idea of what makes an argument logical. What makes my outcome when I am arguing my position to somebody? What makes what I am saying either valid or invalid? And so to do that, we have to concern ourselves with what's called compound statements. So a compound statement joins 2 or more simple statements together with things called connectives. What we're going to spend our time doing today, because again, I don't assume that you know anything about this or have ever seen this, is I'm going to introduce to you the 5 connectives that we have. And we are going to practice doing 2 things. We're going to practice taking a statement and writing it symbolically, and we're going to take a statement and we're going to take a symbolic statement and write it in words. And I know that it probably at some point you're going to be like, okay, I get it. And I totally understand today, as far as math goes, is not maybe the most exciting day, but rest assured, you're going to use this skill the whole unit. And I just want to make sure we cover it thoroughly so that I don't have to keep referring back to how to do this. So as easy as this might feel for you or seem, that is great with me. Just make sure you practice, because we're going to be using this as we go through. I just did the notes sheet for the next couple sections, and we are going to have to use these as part of bigger problems. Okay, so the first connective can involve just a single statement, just a simple statement, or it can involve a compound statement. It's called the negation. And the negation does something very simple. Simple doesn't mean easy, but a negation does something simple. What it does is it changes the truth value. So the first of our connectives is called the negation. The negation, it changes the truth value of a statement. So just to be clear what that means, if you have a statement that's true, when you make the negation, you're making a false statement, and vice versa. So looking back up at our 3 simple statements that we just determined the truth value of, we are going to write the negation of each of them. Okay, so the first one I will do with you says the capital of Florida is Orlando. Well, what word am I going to add to that in order to change the truth value? Perfect, not. We could change the actual Orlando to the real capital, but we are just doing the negation. We are not giving the correct answer. We're just changing the statement that's given. So here's the negation of the first one, the capital of Florida. Oops, not Florida's. I was thinking of the word is. That happens more and more as I get older. So the capital of Florida, I'm just going to cross that out, is not Orlando. And now that is, I'm just going to put in parentheses, that is a true statement. Yeah, the capital is not Orlando. The capital is not a lot of places. So I'm going to give you about 45 seconds just to go ahead and write down what you would propose the negation of the other 2 statements in example 1 are. So check your answer with mine. If you got a question, bring it up. Don't be shy. We're all friends here. So the second one is Winter Haven is not in Polk County. So again, we've changed the truth value. That is false. And then last but not least, Professor Perkins is not losing his hair. We can only hope for him to have a vibrant population of hair follicles, but that's not my lot in life. Bad genes. All right, so there we go. Any questions so far about negating a simple statement? You're going to do a bunch of that. Now, before we move on to the next connective, the negation does have something that we do need to investigate into in a little more depth. And that is the idea if I have what's called a quantified statement, which you use all the time. I just, in fact, used one right now. So a quantified statement is a simple statement that uses a word such as all, some, or none. Or another form of none is no. So our quantified statements, these are simple statements that contain the words all, some, or none. You are making some sort of qualification, some sort of quantity. So negating them can be a little bit tricky because I totally understand why you do this. That's why we're all learning together. Our brain wants to make it just as simple as it was. So for instance, example 3, I give you the statement, some telephones can take pictures. And I say, well, let's go ahead and negate this. What is the opposite truth value? And I know what you want to say. You're probably thinking it right now, that some telephones cannot take pictures, right? That's what you want to say, but that's wrong. That's not the negation. That doesn't change the truth value because here's why. If I tell you that some cameras, or excuse me, if I tell you some telephones do take pictures, then what's automatically also true? Some don't. Those are complementary statements. They are not opposite statements. Okay, so don't fall into that trap. I'm going to put 2 or 3 of these on the next test. I promise. Put a little asterisk by this. Okay. I just want to make sure that you remember and you appropriately know how to negate a quantified statement. So here we go. What is the negation of this? Well, here's how I like to do this. When I am negating a quantified statement, I like to take the sum at the beginning, the SOM, and I make that all. So all telephones. And now here is where I either negate or make positive, whatever the verb is right here. So in this case, some telephones can. I'm going to change that into all telephones cannot take pictures. Those have opposite truth values. And it might be a little easier to see by considering the result. Think about this. If I come up to you and started a conversation, this would be a weird way to start the conversation, but if I came up to you and said, all telephones cannot take pictures, right? So I've made this declarative statement that all telephones can't take pictures. What would you have to show me in order to refute me? Would you have to say all telephones can? What would you have to show me? Just one. I'd have to show you my iPhone, right? This one can. So therefore, it's not true that all telephones cannot take pictures. Okay, so that's how this is the idea of an argument, and that's why we're getting into this. So what I would like you to do, here is another sum statement. Exercise 1. Please write down what you propose the negation of that one is. Once again, I've got a sum statement. So I'm hoping what you did is you took the word some and you changed it to all. And so then all books what? Are longer than 100 pages. Not in this case, no, because of the not. I'm going to tell you, we're going to talk about the no in just a minute in my next example. Yeah. Anytime anytime the given statement starts with some, you change to all, and then you change the negation of the verb. So in this case, there was a not, there is are not, so I just changed that to are. In the previous one, the some changed to all, and I changed the can to cannot. That's how we form the negation, trying to keep this nice and as super simple as possible. Now, you might be saying, because it just came up, what about none or no? That is a great question. No is another form of all. It's an absolute, right? If you say none or no students, then you're basically saying all, right? So here's what I like to do. There's another way I could give you to remember this, but I'm trying to make this as intuitive as possible because I know it's not necessarily intuitive. Here's what I do, or what I did when I first learned this. Instead of leaving the statement like this, I'm going to change it real quick. Instead of no students earn A's, I'm going to say all students do not earn A's. Okay, those mean the same thing. That no statement means all do not. So I recommend you do this for the first couple no statements that you encounter until you see what the pattern is. Okay, so now I'm going to follow the same thing that I just did. My all statement, the reverse of an all statement is some. And then I'm going to take the do not and I'm going to say do. So I'm doing the same thing I did before. The only thing I did on this one that was any different is I just changed that no or that none, and I changed it to an all or not statement. That way I can just follow the same exact pattern that I've given you. And after you've done a couple, then you can see that you can skip the middleman there and just go from no students earn A's to some do earn A's, and you could probably see that right away. All right, so one more. I've given you an all statement down there at the bottom. All birds can sing. So write for me, please, the negation of that. Once again, and one more time, the all is going to become a some, and then all birds, and this time I'm going to take the verb there that can, and I'm going to negate that, so some birds cannot or can't sing. We will talk the very last section of this unit. I think there's 6 sections in this unit. The very last one is arguments involving quantified statements. Okay, so they will reappear for us as we get a little further along in this. Before I flip the page, anybody got any questions? Anything, have I gone too fast? Anything I've not done a good job clarifying? Okay, flip the page. All right, now we get into the heart of the issue. So at the top of the page, you see that I have defined 3 simple statements for us. I've said we are going to symbolically say that statement P, anytime you see the letter P, means the house is for sale. Q, the letter Q is going to represent we can afford the house. And R is the house has a garage. Okay, so those are the 3 statements that I have made up just so that we can get a little practice. One thing I want to mention to you, because when we come back next week, I am going to give you I'm going to give you a sentence. And one of the first things you have to do before you can do any work is you've got to define the simple statements you're going to be using. Not a hard thing to do, I don't think. But one thing, the only detail you have to remember is that when you define your simple statements in whatever situation, they are always defined positively. Meaning they're defined without a negation, because we will use a symbol to represent the negation. And I'm just about to tell you, we're going to wrap up our talk about the negation here in just a moment. All right, so again, this is the point. I understand you're probably going to get a little bit of writer's cramp. Forgive me. Not every day in the logic section is going to be like this, but we've got to go through and do this just to get it out of the way. Okay, so the first connective that I've already told you about is the negation. We've already spent a bit of time on it, but what I just want to say here is the negation in our book is symbolized by a squiggly line. And when you see that squiggly line, the way you read it is it's read not, okay, for the negation. If you've ever seen logic before, if you've been in another book, the more traditional symbol, when I was in college, because I majored in set theory for my, who knew there was such a thing, and this was part of sets and logic. They're a little bit related, but not so much for us. The symbol was this kind of thing right here. It looks like an L that's on its side. You don't need to know that, just letting you know that it's out there. Okay, so what we're going to do now is write squiggly P as a statement. Okay, write not P as a statement. Well, I'm going to do that. This is just what we did before. There's nothing explosive about this. So if statement P up at the top is the house is for sale, then squiggly P is the house is not for sale. We're just learning to interpret lingo. That is what we're practicing here. So once you've done that, please do exercise 3. Exercise 3 says write squiggly R as a statement. What'd you write for squiggly R? Sure, great. The house does not have a garage. Or you may have written something like the house has no garage or something to that effect. Okay, then you have negated, somehow you're communicating that there is an absence of a garage on this house. Okay. So far, so good? Okay, that wraps up the negation. Okay, so hopefully you feel like that was a fairly painless thing. So the second connective that we are going to involve ourselves with in this chapter is called the conjunction. If you like English, you like grammar, then you are probably familiar with the word conjunction, and it means the same sort of thing here. Okay, the conjunction is symbolized by, this is called a caret. It looks like a V that is upside down, so like a little hat. Okay, so the conjunction is symbolized by the caret, and when you see that caret, you read it as the word and. Okay, that's what the conjunction is. We saw the word and a little bit when we talked about sets. What did and mean? It meant, well, it did not mean the union. Mean we're intersection, both is what and meant. And meant both, the intersection. So here we go. At example 6, I will do, it says write P caret Q, or P and Q is a statement. Okay, so this is about as complicated as it looks. So P is the house is for sale. The caret means and, I'm going to underline it, that's the caret. And then Q is we can afford the house. We okay with that? Anybody got a question about it? I love questions, so just remember, don't be shy or anything. Exercise 4, then do the one right below it. That's best. Yes. If we were talking, that's a really great question. If we were talking in more, so the question, in case you did not hear it, is do I have to write these sentences in the same order as they are? And here, yes, that is going to be what I expect. If we were doing a more in-depth talk about logic, we would talk about the order, like does the order matter on the statements? For some of them it does, for some of them it doesn't. But we don't get into that here, so we're just going to stay with the order things are given to us, so we don't accidentally make a mistake we didn't intend. So to that point, R is the house has a garage. It's another and statement because I see the caret, so there's and then Q is we can afford the house. I have one more problem. Just because we're going to start combining the different connectives as we get them. So exercise 5 does just that. It combines our conjunction and the negation. So give that a try. Make your best effort, please. So this one, P says the house is for sale. The caret means and then squiggly Q means what? Perfect. I know it doesn't probably feel like you're doing anything, but if you're following along, you're doing great. You are doing something. Okay, this is essential stuff for where we're going. Okay, so we all right so far? Anybody got a question, comment, concern for me? Okay, so 2 connectives so far. We talked about the negation. We talked about the conjunction. Here is connective 3. Connective 3 is called the disjunction. The disjunction is symbolized by an upside down caret. It looks like a V, and it's read or. Okay, so again, it's related to the union that we talked about in the last unit, but you don't have to know that or not. So the disjunction is symbolized by the upside down caret, and it is read or. So I'm going to just have you do exercise 6 real quick. Very straightforward is that first one. So I'm going to write P upside down caret Q as a statement. So that goes, the house is for sale. The upside down caret means or, so I'm going to write the word or here. And then Q is we can afford the house. If that feels all right to you, then please do the next exercise 7, where I combine the disjunction and the negation. Okay, so this one starts off with squiggly Q. So squiggly Q is the negation of statement Q, so we cannot afford the house. Or, and then statement R, the house has a garage. Perfect. Yes. So you're saying, what do those 2 things have to do with each other? Yeah, that's why we're learning logic and how things relate. So when we come back, we're going to talk about how these different connectives affect the truth values of statements. That's a beautiful question. I love that you are processing this. Yeah, sometimes the things we write down don't seem to have any apparent meaning, and I totally get it. And that is one of there's a lot of beautiful things about logic. That's one of the goofy things about logic, is you end up with some statements that you're like, okay, well, who cares if the house has a garage if we can't afford it? So yeah, but we're going to come back. We're going to talk about truth value, how they interact, and we'll go into a little more depth. Last thing here on this side of the page before we go to the next connective, I just want to make mention, you're going to see this quite a bit. You're going to see a negation in front of some parentheses, and it doesn't matter what the statement is in the parentheses. It can be conjunction, disjunction. It could be one of the things we talk about next. When you see a negation in front of a grouping symbol right there, What that means is you are negating the whole thing in parentheses. Okay, you're negating whatever that is, however P or Q, how they interact with each other, you're negating that whole thing. So the way you phrase that in words is you will say something like, it is false that, or you might say it is not true that. It is false that. So that's the squiggly. So I'm just going to highlight this. And I'm going to put the squiggly under that. That's what the squiggly communicates to you when it's in front of parentheses. It is false that, or it is not true that, if you prefer those words. And then you just write the rest of the statement as you normally would have. So that is P or Q. So the house is for sale. It is false that the house is for sale. Or we can afford the house. All right, that's the bottom of page 2. Anybody got questions about the conjunction or disjunction before we flip the page and we do the next couple of connectives? All right, then let's do it. We'll get on to the next page. Oh, I'm sorry. I got excited about the next connective, but I had an example for you to do of the squiggly in front of the parentheses. So do exercise 8 up at the very top, please. Just want to make sure we reinforce that with you. All right, once again, you see the squiggly in front of the parentheses. So that means the first thing that hopefully you wrote down is it is false that, or it is not true that. And then I saw a bunch of you looking back and forth. Yes, I learned when I did this with my class yesterday that I probably should have repeated the simple statements at the top of the page again. So sorry that you have to learn or help me learn the hard way how to do good handouts. Okay, but it is false that squiggly R, so that is the house has no garage. Or does not have a garage. And the house is for sale. Okay, so that's the first 3 connectives. Here is the 4th connective for us. I'm sure you have used in just everyday language this 4th connective, so we're going to hopefully learn how to use it properly. So this next one is called a conditional statement. The conditional statement is symbolized by an arrow that points in a direction, generally from left to right, but it doesn't have to. And it is read if then. So as soon as you see the words if then, you are dealing with a conditional statement. And I'm going to tell you in just a minute what a conditional statement, or a little bit of the structure of it. Again, when we come back next week, we're going to talk about the truth value, how you know you're using a conditional statement properly or not. So for example 9, we have, as soon as you see this arrow right here, that should trigger to you, oh, this is a conditional statement. I need to start with the word if. Okay, so then if, and then this is one, just to speak to that question from earlier, the conditional statement is one that definitely the order matters. Okay, so you cannot get this out of order. Okay, so if P, and P is if the house is for sale. And then we say then, okay, that then, the if and the then is what that arrow means. That's the conditional statement. Then Q, then we can afford the house. Are we doing all right? Am I going too fast for anyone? I know it's a lot of writing. I apologize for that. Can't be helped. So a couple things about this just to prepare us for what we're going to do. The thing that comes after the if, the thing on the left side of the arrow where the arrow starts, this statement, in this case, it's P, the house is for sale. That is called the condition. I didn't leave myself. I didn't plan ahead. It's called the condition. And what we're going to see when we learn a little bit more about this is it's that part of the conditional statement that tells me under what circumstances I apply this. So if the house wasn't for sale, then this statement has no meaning at all. So if the house is for sale, what's the condition? The house has to be for sale. And then this here, what comes after the then, that's the consequence that we look for. So being able to see that, maybe a little bit of understanding of that, that's going to help when we talk next week about the truth value, in particular about the conditional statement. Okay, so exercise 9, for now we are just practicing using our connectives. So if you would please write exercise 9 in words. So exercise 9, again, I see that arrow. The arrow clues me in that I start this with an if, and then if P, if the house is for sale. Then squiggly R, and squiggly R is the house has no garage. There we go. All right, so before we get to our last conditional, you can see that, or excuse me, our last connective, you can see that when we're dealing with two statements, you know, there's only so much fun we can have. So in this class, we're gonna step it up just one little bit more. And so if I have more than two statements, sometimes they are related to each other, or we have to know what order to consider these statements in. And so in order to do that grammatically, in a compound statement, commas indicate grouping. So commas are significant and they have meaning to us mathematically. Okay, which I know that's bad for me because when I write stuff, I comma splice all over the place. If maybe you share my affinity for just loving to throw a comma down anywhere I possibly can. But when you're reading your statement and we're going to translate it into words, commas have meaning. So for instance, example 10 is right there. Example 10 has a P and Q in parentheses. It has the arrow after it. So first of all, the bigger statement is this arrow. Okay, the bigger statement is linking, the arrow is linking the two sides. So I'm going to start out with an if because of the arrow. But notice the condition on the left is two statements joined together. So when I write this statement, look for where I put the comma, okay? And if you have any question about what the comma is telling us, please let me know. So this says, if the house is for sale, and we can afford the house. I'm going to pause, let you get caught up with me. So those two statements, the house is for sale and we can afford the house, they're on the same side of the conditional statement. They are in parentheses, they are grouped together. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a comma right there. So now when you see that comma, if we, on the last page, when we are going to do this process in reverse, a lot less writing, so that's good news. But when we reverse this process, you see that comma means if there's two or more statements, you group them, you put parentheses around them. And then we put the word then because we have a conditional statement, if then, and then the then, there's only one statement on this other side, so that's why there's no parentheses on the other side. Statement R, the house has a garage. Everyone tracking with me on why I put the comma where I did on that problem? Okay, this is difficult to learn, so I just want to make sure we're doing good. So you take a try, exercise 10. You're doing the same sort of thing. Just note where that comma is going to go. Oh, also, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. I have a typo here. Exercise 10 in the parentheses, do Q or put a P there. It wouldn't really make sense to have the same statement twice in there. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Squiggly R is the house does not have a garage. So what I have to now do is I have to communicate to anybody reading this that my original statement had that statement alone and that the rest that comes is grouped together. So I'm going to put a comma here and then the rest is grouped. So and we can afford the house. Or the house is for sale. Yeah. No, it doesn't always come after. Notice where my comma is. See, my statements over here are grouped. So notice those two statements are on this side of the comma. So the comma is dividing up this statement and telling you which side has one statement and which side has two. Okay. If the grouping was on the left, as in example 10, okay, so if I had something like this, I'm just going to change the grouping. If I had squiggly R and Q and then put the or P, then yes, I would put the comma after the Q statement, whatever that is, okay, and to have the two. So that's the difference, okay? The comma is definitely communicating something. Great question. Any other questions? All right. Well, we're almost done with all the writing. You're doing good. If your hands, if you're massaging your hand there, make sure it's not cramping up. You're doing great. The last connective is called the biconditional. Like a bicycle, prefix bi means two. Okay, so this means there's two conditions. What a biconditional is, and again, we'll learn more about this next week. Biconditional means that both statements are conditions, both statements are consequences. Okay, so biconditional is symbolized by a double arrow, and it's read if and only if. When you see that double arrow, you see if and only if. If that's a lot of words for you, there's an abbreviation math people like, because math people are fundamentally lazy. It's the smooth if. There we go. And if with two F's, that means if and only if. It's the abbreviation. So yes, if you write IFF on the test, I accept it, but just make sure that you're writing it where you want to write it. Okay, so that has meaning. All right, so real quick, I mean, I don't think that this would be anything that you couldn't pull off on your own, but I'm going to do the first one. The first one is Q. We can afford the house. Then I've got the double arrow that indicates the biconditional. So I'm going to write if and only if. And then squiggly R, which is the house does not have a garage. So I've given you a final example on this page before we turn to the next page and kind of do the reverse process. Yours has grouping. Please notice that. I'm going to get started. Check your words with my words. If we differ at all, let me know. So I start off with a squiggly P. So the house is not for sale. Just to save a little room, I'm going to use the IFF, if and only if. Q, which is we can afford the house. Here's the thing to look for, both of those two statements, the if and only if, that's all on the left side here. So I'm going to put a comma right there. That's important. That's where that comma goes. And then we say, and the house does not have a garage. Everybody got that comma in the right place? That's the significant part of that. Yes, sir. What do you mean? Where did you want to place the comma? Okay, great. So the question is, how do I know where to place the comma? What tells me in any problem that we are going to do in here, and we're just doing a very quick survey of logic. Okay, so you will be given, it's going to be nice and clear. You'll be given something in parentheses. Notice those two things are in parentheses, right? They are grouped together. And so when I take that statement that's in symbols and I write it in words, I have to communicate that those two go together. And that's what this comma means. This comma means, because see, I've got those two statements that I circled symbolically. They are right there. I've just underlined them. And that's how I know where the comma goes. Okay, better? Awesome. Great question. I appreciate you asking it because I'm sure somebody else had the same question. I'm going to flip the page. I know we are tired of the house being for sale and whether we can afford the house. So good news. I have changed the statements because I got tired of them. I had to do this yesterday too. And so I'm even doubly tired. Okay, so my new statements, P is the water 70 degrees, which I wish the sun was shining and we could go swimming. That sounds really good, but that's not for today, okay, because it's kind of miserable out today. But those are our statements. So what I want to do is we're just going to go through, we're just going to practice the reverse process of taking a statement in words and practice writing it in symbols. So the first one, exercise 12, I would like you to take a moment. I'm going to give you like 20 to 30 seconds. The water is 70 degrees and we do not go swimming. Write it symbolically. Again, please notice that the simple statements I gave you are all defined positively. They're defined without a negation. Okay, just want to draw your attention to that so that when you have to define your own simple statements, you know to do that. And then any negation is added in symbolically as we have in this exercise. So hopefully you're not overcomplicating this process. It starts off saying the water is 70 degrees. Okay, so that is simply statement P right there. Then I've got the word and means the conjunction, so I'll put a caret right there. And then we do not go swimming. So statement R is we go swimming. So what do I have to put in front of statement R? A squiggly, so it's squiggly R. And there you go, you've written that statement symbolically. Great job. Same thing with exercise 13. Ask any questions that you need to ask, please. All right, exercise 13 starts with the word if. The word if, right after I read that, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to read another word. The word if means that I need an arrow. Okay, I've got a conditional statement. So now what comes next? The sun is not shining, so that is squiggly Q. After the then, so that means now I'm on the other side of the arrow. Okay, so whatever comes after the if is on the left side of the arrow. What comes after the then is on the other side. The water is not 70 degrees. That's squiggly P. Next one, I throw a comma in just so we can see how you do with that. So remember, you only need the parentheses if there's more than one statement on a side. If there's a single statement, you don't have to put it in parentheses. Okay, so on this one, again, if you have a question, I understand it. Again, this one starts with the word if. So since it starts with the word if, I'm going to put an arrow right there. And whatever comes directly after the word if goes on the left. Well, what comes directly after the word if is the water is 70 degrees, so that's P. Notice the comma. So that means I do not need parentheses on this side because there's only one statement, but notice after the comma, there's two things over here. So I've got then the sun is not shining, so that is squiggly Q, and we go swimming, which is R, but because both of those are together on the same side of the comma, I put parentheses around that side. Tracking with me? That's a pretty difficult thing, okay? Especially the first couple times you do it. All right, the next one, exercise 15, another comma. Just make sure we're practicing that. So give it a try. All right, this one starts off with the words we go swimming. So we go swimming is R. Or, the word or means the disjunction. So it's symbolized by the V. The sun is shining. So that is Q. Then I have a comma. So what do I have to put around that statement that I've just written? Parentheses. They are on the same side of the comma, so they get parentheses. Then I have the words if and only if. If and only if means the biconditional. And on the other side, I just have one statement. The water is 70 degrees. That is P. In this class, we're only going to be dealing with things that have three simple statements. Of course, if you were really a logician and if you're really investigating this further, statements can have any number, or excuse me, compound statements can have any number of simple statements. But again, we're not trying to make this unpalatable, just trying to teach you a little bit about logic. Last one, exercise 16. Coming full circle to something that we talked about earlier. All right, this one starts off with the words, it is false that. What does that mean to do? A squiggly in front of parentheses, yes. Okay, so we're just doing in reverse what we did earlier. The words it is false that or it is not true that means you have a negation in front of parentheses. So, and then in the parentheses, we have if the sun is shining. So this is a conditional statement. If the sun is shining, so that's Q on the left side. We do not go swimming. That is squiggly R on the right side. And that is that. Yes. Yes, to differentiate so the question was, would I use brackets if I have more than one set of parentheses in a situation like this? And the answer is yes. Just like in arithmetic, just to make sure you know what ones go together, you would use different shaped ones. And in fact, we'll see that when we go to form our arguments in section 5, we will have to use some brackets, okay? Argument is just a gigantic conditional statement that we're going to be dealing with.